Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to welcome one of India's most influential voices in diplomacy and global affairs, Dr. S. Jaysankar. A career diplomat and strategic thinker, Dr. Jaysankar joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1977 and went on to build a distinguished career spanning over 4 decades. He has represented India at the highest levels as ambassador to the United States, China, and the Czech Republic, served as the High Commissioner to Singapore, later as India's Foreign Secretary, and since 2019 has served as India's Minister of External Affairs, where he continues to shape and advance India's foreign policy on the global stage. Widely respected for his clarity of thought and articulation of India's interests globally, Dr. Jaysankar plays a central role in India's engagement with the world. Sir, we are honored to have you with us today.
The pleasure really is all mine, and I can't think of a better way to start the new year than being with all of you. And I'm really delighted to be not just in IIT Madras, but to be part of an event which is actually led by students.
Thank you for your kind words, sir. So if we may start with the chat, sir.
Sure, please.
Beginning with the formative years, sir. Since you come from a household steeped into strategic thinking, did you ever feel a sense of inevitability about joining the Indian Foreign Service? Or was there a moment in your life where you almost chose a completely different path?
No, I don't think there was a sense of inevitability about anything. Life is not like that. I think when I was your age, I was probably less knowledgeable than you, but probably as, probing my way or trying to figure out for myself what I would do in life. After the event, a lot of things would look it's a kind of post facto rationalization that looks like, oh, you knew that it was going to go on that trajectory. But believe me, when you are a vehicle on that trajectory, you don't actually have that sense of certitude and of finiteness. I think it was a combination. I mean, it was an interest, yes. It was an interest, and I'm normally very conservative about giving advice to people. But the one advice I give, especially to young people, is if you have an interest and you can make a profession out of it, believe me, nothing can be nicer, because you never think of it as, something you have to do. It's something which you like doing. It comes very naturally to you. Every day you actually enjoy what your work is. There is really no difference between work and non-work when you enjoy what you do.
Thank you for that advice, sir. Also, thanks to those eureka moments which made you decide that you want to take this path. And because of you, India's foreign policy has received a very positive outlook today.
Well, I didn't have a eureka moment. I had a set of, incremental decisions, yes, and then there was an orbital jump.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you, sir. If we may move to the core Indian foreign policy
sure.
now. You had mentioned that instead of the traditional India policy, which is often a prisoner of Western intellectual constructs, we must root ourselves into a more Bharat vision with innate confidence. How do we prevent this from being misread by our Western partners as an anti-Western move instead of just the pro-Bharat evolution?
Look, I think the short answer, how you prevent people from misreading you, is to communicate. If you communicate well and clearly and honestly, I think other countries, other people respect it and accept it. Now, if you go around the world, actually, a lot of people are very proud of what they are about. What is their culture, tradition, heritage, and what is the persona, in a way. I see no reason why we should not be. I mean, after all, if you look at it, there are really very, very few ancient civilizations which have survived to become major modern nation states, and we are one of them. We have a sense of our past, which very few countries have. I mean, I can count those countries on the fingers of one hand, and not too many fingers at that. So we have, there is a lot that we have which is in us. It's something which is inherited, it's part of our belief system. Nobody needs to teach us that. You actually, in many ways, you pick it up, in your surroundings, in your homes. It is there in our language, in the concepts and metaphors we use. So how do you actually bring, it's like almost you have tools inside you, but you are not using those tools because your education system or the dominant intellectual stream is replaced it with some external tools. I have nothing against those. I mean, they also add to your capabilities. But how do you bring out those internal, tools and mechanisms and creativity and energies which are inside us and express them? And it's again part of an evolution, because after all 200 years, after a Western dominated world, it is now 80 years since much of Asia and Africa and Latin America regained their independence. And in those 200 years, their own cultures got suppressed. So I think your question, how do you make sure this is not anti-Western? I think it's non-Western, and it's important for us to explain to the West that, look, there was a period of distortion where the natural diversity of the world was suppressed, and that diversity is now returning, and that diversity doesn't have to be threatening. That diversity will coexist with the West. In many ways, it would actually reinforce a lot of things the West believes in. One example which I cite in one of my books is it was our decision to opt for a democratic political model, which actually made the very idea of democracy as a universal political concept. That had we not gone that way, I think the democratic model as we know it would have been actually very, very regional and very narrow. And so I would say it's our right, I would say almost a duty, our obligation to express our thoughts and our values and our culture and our history. But it can be done in a congenial partnership kind of way, because I think that partnership with the West is important. I think it is very much a way of how we shape the world.
Thank you for that, sir. It actually reminds me of an excerpt towards the end of your book, Why Bharat Matters, where you mention in the passing years, India is definitely going to matter because India is turning more Bharat. And I think that message is very clear now as we rediscover our heritage and the messages from that. Thank you, sir. Sir, speaking of recent developments, we have seen how India has had a considerably increasing impact globally, be it with its adapting the role of Vishwamitra and its neighborhood first policy. However, this also shoulders newer responsibilities onto us, like Vaccine Maitri, while we also have to accelerate our self-growth to become the Viksit Bharat by 2047. How do you think we can strike a line between India's global credibility and maintaining the immediate domestic deployment of our resources for our growth?
I don't see that as a either or choice. If you look at the history of the world, countries have not grown by saying, I'll grow at home and I'll have nothing to do with abroad because it's a waste of my resources or it's a subtraction of my resources and energy from home. In fact, countries have grown by growing at home, then engaging abroad, leveraging the international environment, in a way contributing to it, gaining from it, and to me being, see, when we again use this word sometimes so casually, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. What is actually the messaging of that word, of that term? The term is that we have never considered the world as an inimical or a hostile environment from which we have to defensively protect ourselves. Now, yes, we have limitations on our resources, less than we had, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But nevertheless, we do. Now, if you are in a problem-solving mode, with limited resources, how do you have maximum impact? That is actually the problem which has to be solved. And what we try to do in Indian foreign policy today, in Indian diplomacy today, is actually solve that problem. And we try to do that by partly using our competitiveness, using our strengths, leveraging other institutions and possibilities. I'll give you an example. I would say, even to me, an IIT Madras campus in Tanzania is a way by which Indian foreign policy has leveraged the capabilities of an institution here to make a huge impact there. That is something I want to talk about. But I would, make this statement. In my entire career, which is quite long, I have never seen anything having a greater emotional impact on the rest of the world than giving vaccines. I've actually had people who tear up when they remember the first vaccine shipment. So, if you remember, look, COVID was a bad memory. We have put it all behind us. You try to actually get it out as much of your system as possible. But at that time, there were countries, there were developed countries, Western countries, some of them, who had stocked up 8 times the number of vaccines of their population. Nobody is going to take 8 doses, okay? But there were countries, and big countries, who had 8 times the vaccine stock of their population, and next to them were small countries to whom they were not willing to give 10,000 doses, okay? Now, when you had somebody who was themselves, who had first of all responsibility of 1.4 billion, and then on top of it who had initiated the program. We were still in the middle of it, and we felt at that time that many of these countries should not, giving them 100,000, 200,000 doses was something which would be a gesture of solidarity. It would be make or break for them. And it was something we could do, and we could explain to our people why we could do it. And I can tell you, it is something even today. Today we talk less about vaccines. I hear it actually when I go out. When I go to Latin America, when I go to small island states, people from the Caribbean, people from the Pacific, many of them say, look, we had no chance of getting within smelling distance of vaccine but for the fact that you people gave it to us. So I mentioned that as an example that, we were the world's most efficient producers of vaccines. The same if you look, at that time, my second job was in a way a sort of a supply chain and oversight minister for some of this, because a lot of the supply chain was actually outside the country. And again, people don't realize it was very important to have that global connect and that global responsibility, because the world also helped us. I think that's something we should acknowledge, that the supply chain came from outside India so that the product could be made in India. And we had a moral obligation. Not all countries at that time necessarily fulfilled it. So the bottom line I would say is, don't think of it as home and abroad. Why am I doing this for the world when I still have problems at home? We have to, we'll steady up at home, we'll build up at home. But at the same time, you don't not do foreign policy because you got domestic problems. They've got to walk hand in hand. You have to do both at that time. And the example I gave of IIT Madras, I had the privilege of going to Zanzibar, of seeing the opening of that institution. But I was just thinking to myself at that time, and again today when I came, think 10 years from now. Think 10 years from now, how many students of Africa would have passed through its portals? Look at the impact that we would have on the minds of people who in their own countries would be economic and technology leaders. It's an investment beyond value. You will shape, and remember, some, decades ago, others used to do it. If you look at the way I'm giving you as an example, how American universities shape the image of America abroad. So today, I would say education for us, particularly higher education and skills. I would take it beyond education to innovation, to talent promotion, nurturing. This is an area which I feel at the end of the day, there are oil powers, there are resource powers. We are a human resource power. And we should play to our strengths. We now have the capability to start doing so. When institutions of excellence in the country start going abroad, believe me, in the business of foreign policy, I now just have a huge addition to my arsenal. And what I see 10 years from now in Africa, from this one institution, is something very, very transformational.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for mentioning IIT Madras Zanzibar. We are all very proud of that, and I thank the director and everyone involved for this project. So now, sir, if we could, in an attempt to reflect the actual concerns and aspirations of the student community, we thought it would be better if we get their voices directly onto the stage.
Sure.
So if I may have your permission, can we take questions from the audience? So we are open to questions from the audience. If anyone has any question, please raise your hands. Can we have the gentleman over there? Can someone please give the mic to him?
Good morning, sir. My name is Zaira Gandhi. I am a second year BTech student pursuing civil engineering here at IIT Madras. My question to you, sir, is that our neighborhood is often shaped by asymmetry and volatile domestic politics. Given the recent security and political shifts in Bangladesh, which was underlined by the fact that you visited there 2 days ago, how is India recalibrating its neighborhood-first policy while maintaining a stature of non-interference and protecting our security interests? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I was there in Bangladesh just 2 days ago. I had gone to represent India at the funeral of the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Begum Khaleda Zia. But let me actually take your question in a somewhat broader format, not just Bangladesh, but neighborhood as a whole. Okay. We are blessed with a lot of neighbors of various kinds. And I want to answer your question in a very common sense kind of way. Because, at the end of the day, people make out as though diplomacy is rocket science. It's common sense in kind of polished language. Now, what do you do in common sense with a neighbor? Any neighbor. You are in a hostel, you have neighbors. If you have a neighbor who is good to you, or at least who is not harmful to you, your natural instinct is to be kind, is to help that neighbor. If the neighbor has a problem, you would like to contribute in some way. If nothing else, you'll say hello. You will try to build friendships, bonding, etc. And that's what we do as a country. So when you look around our neighborhood, wherever actually there's a sense of good neighborliness, I think you have seen India invest, India help, India share. So, we were talking about the COVID. Most of our neighbors got their first shipment of vaccines from India. Again, when our vaccination program was still going on. Okay. Then, I give you a second example, the Ukraine conflict. Because of the Ukraine conflict, there was there were food shortages, there were fuel shortages, there were financial crises. Now again, with many of our neighbors, we supplied fuel, we helped out with food, we helped out with fertilizer, and in a sense, we were sharing what we had. Now, some neighbors went through very exceptional stresses. A very notable one was Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka actually had an acute financial crisis. And we actually stepped up with a package of $4 billion at a time when, their negotiations with the IMF were still sort of moving at a very glacial pace. So that's what, in a way, good neighbors can do. I mean, just recently, there was a cyclone in Sri Lanka called Ditwa. The day the cyclone happened, by that very afternoon, we were there. We were there with help. Our ships were at the port, but within a day, our helicopters reached there. Our rescue teams were there. I went there myself with a few days later with a kind of a reconstruction, rebuilding package. And believe me, if you ask the average person, they have that sense that, look, I have a neighbor like India. I know when things get bad, I can rely on a country like this. And again, it doesn't have to be a crisis. You also work with neighbors by power grids, by waterways, by roads, by ports, by doing business, by helping tourism, by having people come for medical treatment. So this is the positive scenario. But you can also have bad neighbors. Unfortunately, we do. Now, when you have bad neighbors, and if you look to the one to the west, if a country decides that they will deliberately, persistently, unrepentantly continue with terrorism, we have a right to defend our people against terrorism. We will exercise that right. How we exercise that right is up to us. Nobody can tell us what we should do or not. We will do whatever we have to do to defend ourselves. It's a common sense proposition. Now, again, as I said, a lot of it is goodwill. Many years ago, we agreed to a water arrangement, water sharing arrangement, because the belief, the underpinning of that was, it was a gesture of goodwill, because for good neighborliness, we were doing it. But if you had decades of terrorism, there is no good neighborliness. If there is no good neighborliness, you don't get the benefits of that good neighborliness. You can't say, I will, please share water with me, but I will continue terrorism with you. That's not reconcilable. So I think there is as I said, a good neighbor, bad neighbor, but an overall neighborhood policy. Most of our neighbors, I think, have the realization that India's growth is today a lifting tide. That if India grows, all our neighbors will grow with us. They will have many more opportunities. I think that, in a sense, is the message which I also took to Bangladesh. And yes, I mean, they are right now heading for their elections. We wish them well in that election. We hope that once things settle down, as I said, the sense of neighborliness in this region will grow.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. We had all read about the economic crisis in Sri Lanka and how India was one of the first countries to step forward. That shows the effectiveness of our neighborhood first policy. Thank you, sir. I hope your question is answered. Any other questions?
Lord.
Can we have the lady over there? Can someone please give the mic to her?
Hello.
I'll take 2-3 questions at a time. It'll be easier for me.
Good morning, sir. My name is Sanjana. My question is, strategic systems often develop blind spots due to institutional incentives. So, what risks should India's what risk should India's strategic establishment? What risk do you think is? What risk do you think India's strategic establishment has been overlooking because it seems sort of unimportant or bureaucratically or politically inconvenient to address?
To make sure timeline is followed well, we'll take 2-3 questions and Minister. Okay, 3 questions.
Three questions at a time. I'll answer you. Let me take 2 more questions.
Can we have the lady over there ask a question, please?
Hi sir, I'm Varshini, I'm a BTech student, and my question is, as strategies are being more and more developed by AI, chips and data, how does our reliance on the Western softwares and technological guidelines and supply chains affect our digital dependency on other countries moving forward?
One more.
Anyone else? One last question before we answer.
Sure.
Can we have the lady over there ask a question, please? Can someone please pass her the mic?
Hello sir, I am Diya Lakshman. I study in class 10 at Kendra Vidyalaya IIT Chennai, and I would like to ask, as we know, diplomacy is often a game of high stakes patience. So I would like to know how you personally unplug or find clarity when you're in the middle of a multi-day international summit.
Okay, very good. So we start with blind spots and end with patience. Okay. So look, here's the blind spot issue. First of all, it's very hard to say, okay, that's my blind spot, because if you know it's your blind spot, it's not your blind spot. It's often, in a way, auditing forensics you do on yourself and your system to say, okay, we missed that, we should have seen that, we could have anticipated that. And typically, you know, in our business, there are 2 or 3, I would say, orthodoxies or natural behavioral patterns which can create problems. You know, one, there's a natural tendency to extrapolate the past. Okay, we are all empirical. If I met you 10 times, the 11th time, it's very natural, I believe, that you will behave more or less like you did the previous 10 times. So when there are sharp departures, for whatever reason, you know, the departure can be technology, the departure can be politics, the departure can be some, event, of a new disruptive nature, that can actually lead one astray. The other is, again, it's also a tendency when we look even at progress. We benchmark ourselves against ourselves. If you had a set of B's, okay, and then you hit an A-, you're very happy. because you say, okay, I got out of B's, I've hit an A minus. Now, the problem is in the next institute or the next desk or even the next student may have been actually hitting A's before you, so your A minus may not have the value which you think it does. Most blind spots fall in one or the other category. These two tendencies which are very common. But you can have, as they say, a black swan is a blind spot which you really didn't see coming. That it came as a combination of circumstances which was very unique and presented someone with a challenge. I would say today the possibility of this growing is quite high, because world is today being disrupted on so many variables at the same time. Somebody in the next question, somebody mentioned AI, for example. But if you look at technology, you look even at supply chains, you look at economic policies, you look at climate events, pandemics. Just think of the last 5 years. Everything which people said, oh, you can have wars, but in this day and age, you can't have long wars. Nobody can afford it. By the way, there's a long war going on right now, which is into its 4th year. People said, some regions, they will never change. Look at the Middle East and see how much it has changed. We said, oh, we are so interdependent, nobody is going to really mess around with trade, because we have too much locked into trade, nobody is going to take the risk. Guess what? Somebody took a big risk. So, I would say today, one way of dealing with blind spots is to try to continually update your risk assessments. And it sounds like you're playing defense. That's not really the intent, but you actually continuously build a risk mitigation. If you ask me today, what are most countries doing in foreign policy? They are de-risking. They're de-risking their economy, they're de-risking their politics, they're de-risking their dealings with everybody, they're sometimes de-risking their internal, narratives. So that's really right now a very, very big challenge. Moving on to the broader issue, not just AI, but what you say, supply chains, what are the risks of relying on data, on models, on flows, on supply chains, on services which are not yours. Of course there is a risk. There is a risk because whoever is influencing it or controlling it or supplying it, they have an agenda. Everybody in the world has an agenda. So don't expect them not to use it. So part of, when we say Viksit Bharat, when we say Atmanirbhar Bharat, the whole idea is to motivate ourselves, and I say this to all of you, it's particularly your generation, because it's in your lifetime that Viksit Bharat is going to be achieved. That how do we build our systems and our, in a sense, self-reliance. Now again, people sometimes take it to extreme and say, oh, we are going back to the past. We had a protectionist period which didn't work out so well for us. I agree. We had issues in the earlier decades. But that doesn't mean you open up all your doors and windows and let anybody who wants to walk in come into your house. I think we need a kind of a national spirit and a national capability and a national, belief about what we can do. And I give you a very, simple, direct example which relates to people in this room. 5G. This is a country which got its 3G from outside, which got its 4G from outside. But when it came to 5G, we realized the risks of 5G, reliance on 5G from an external provider is so huge that we should make an effort. So today, if you look at telecom, if you look at space, if you look, I'm really very happy that the defense sector today has opened up so much more to innovation and to private enterprise and to creativity. I think these are things we need to do. We should not be insecure. We should not be, hostile to something coming from outside, because at the end of the day we'll be connected, but we need to build our capabilities, and that's what it is about. The unplugging bit, look, in my life I don't have off days, okay? It's not like I work Monday to Friday and say Saturday, Sunday I won't do anything, because the world doesn't accommodate that. The world still runs on a Saturday, Sunday. And often my Friday is somebody's Saturday, and my Monday has to be somebody's Sunday. So my life is very mixed up. It doesn't operate on a single time zone. And as I said, there is no off switch, on switch. So what I try to do is within that build habits and practices and indulgences which make you a stable and reasonable and congenial person who can deal with the rest of the world. So I do what normal people do. I listen to music, I read books, I watch movies, I see sports. Most of the time I'm very normal. And that normalcy, I can tell you, in a way, if you build it into your routine, again, I'm sorry, I'm sliding into advice giving, which is not my normal, but if you build it into your cycle, if you build a physical routine into your cycle, you build give yourself some time to read, write, think, talk, watch, I can tell you your daily routine itself is so balanced that you don't need to unplug, but my wife is sitting here and she may contradict me.
So thank you for those tips, sir. I'm sure a lot of us can adapt these techniques to make smarter decisions. So we'll have one last round of 3 questions. So preferably from the student community. Can we have the gentleman over there ask his question? Towards the front.
Hello. Hi sir, Akshat here. I'm a student here at IIT Madras. I wanted to ask what strategies is India pursuing to handle the global mobility of Indian researchers and engineers while also incentivizing on the long-term talent retention here in India.
Anyone else? Can we have the lady over there ask a question, please?
Good morning, sir. I'm Arshada, BTech undergrad from Mechanical Engineering Department. So my question is, given the growing importance of technology, talent and trust in shaping global trade and influence today, how can India's top academic institutes and research institutes leverage global collaboration to increase the country's soft power?
One last question.
Give it to that guy. Give it to that guy. Is really.
Sir, preferring students.
Yeah, sure.
Can we have the gentleman over there ask his question?
Thank you so much, sir. So, most welcome to IIT Madras. My name is Sher Ali Mumand. I am an international student from Afghanistan. Perhaps I am the only Afghan student here. And I was involved in proposing 4 projects out of 6 for the development of Afghanistan that you have discussed with Mr. Muttaqi in your recent meeting in New Delhi, and would be happy to be part of the implementation on the ground. My question is that how you would assess the recent outcome of your discussion with Mr. Muttaqi or Afghan leadership, and if the outcomes are excellent or successful, so how the will you start visa and ICCR scholarship for Afghan student?
I want to say I didn't know him and it wasn't a planted question. But there's somebody up there, I think I saw. We can take maybe one more. Yeah.
Yeah, we can take another question from someone over there.
Somebody up there.
Someone from the gallery area. Yeah, gentleman over there. Yeah, the one who's standing.
I'm speaking. Hello. It's me. Good morning, sir. My name is Tar Hania, and I am from Arunachal Pradesh. And I am also the student president of the Northeast Society here in IIT Madras. And I have one question for you. So my question here comes from China's behavior to the people specifically from Arunachal Pradesh. In this November 2025, there was a lady who was traveling to China and her passport was seized. She was considered and told that she was a Chinese citizen, and she was blocked in the airport itself. And this is not the only instance. In 2007, and also prior to that in 1980, there was one instance like this. So I just want you to ask, since I know a little bit of geopolitics, I want you to ask, what are your advices for the people of Arunachal Pradesh about this matter? Thank you very much.
So let me start with the first question on global mobility of researchers. You know, if I were to pick 3 factors in the near term, let's say in this decade, which would be truly transformational, one would be AI, one would actually be demography, and the third one I still haven't figured out because it's probably a blind spot. But demography is one of the hugely underestimated factors today in the state of the world. You know, anytime you have some spare time, just look it up. There are going to be societies who are actually looking at a demographic cliff, who are going to struggle with even, forget even replacement rates, they are actually wondering how they're going to keep their economy going. Now, and this is happening at a very time when the other factor, AI, is going to create a very talent-centric existence where human beings will be repurposing themselves in a very potent way and in a very, very impactful way. So you have this very interesting conundrum. There is, on one side, a huge capability that is very visible. It's latent, but it's getting realized every day. But at the end of the day, yes, it requires compute, yes, it requires energy, but it requires talent. On the other side, you will have this very uneven talent pools, talent shortages. So how does the world actually try to balance out this spike in demand which is going to happen with the uncertain availability of it? And the only way is mobility. Now, mobility has issues because particularly irregular mobility can create backlashes. We have seen that happening in some cases. And again, on mobility, the social insecurities which are created by irregular migration, they counter the demands of the economy, the demands of technology. So you will have a scenario where, yes, there will be global mobility of people, but there will also be global mobility of tasking. That in many cases, enterprises or employers or people themselves will say, universities could say this, fine, you are in IIT Chennai, why don't I share this with you and why don't you work on this and let's see how it works between the two of us. So, the tasking will also be far more mobile. Now, in some cases, you can't change it. If you're running an airline, you have to have somebody on a flight. On a cruise ship, you have to have. If you're running a hotel, you need people to manage the hotel. And by the way, each one of these jobs is today seeing enormous mobility. When I travel out, which I do a great deal, one big change I see is I see far more Indians today in different professions and different positions than I have seen ever before in my life. Because that is one sign today of that demand and that mobility which follows. Now, when it comes to researchers, again, I don't think we should look at it as a zero-sum game. It's not like somebody goes out to work means we have lost them. Because experience has actually shown many of the people who've gone out have actually fed back in, triggered, there have been catalysts, there have been contributors, there have been pathways to building relationship. And this is the reality. I mean, the world will not be more autarkic. The world will be more globalized, but within the globalized, the really powerful centers will be, of course, more self-reliant. What will define a pole in a multipolar world is the pole, by its very definition, will be relatively much more self-reliant and sizable than competing nations. So I think this is the reality which awaits us. I see that trend actually growing. And flowing from that, the second issue, which is global collaboration. Again, there are, often when we think of global collaboration, we are psychologically inclined to think of ourselves as takers. I think we need to gradually grow over that. We are also contributors. Many of the very examples I cited to you, if you have an IIT Madras campus outside India, you are a contributor. If you have a rescue force or a disaster response force which goes out somewhere, you're a competitor. You're a contributor. One of our challenges is going to be today, how do we shape the world, not only economically, not only security and, but also intellectually and in terms of knowledge. And it is, I think, the issue over the horizon that we need to address. On our friend from Afghanistan, look, I just want to say this. We have, as you know better than me, centuries of relationship with Afghanistan, which is very societal. There may be governments and regimes which have gone up and down. I think at the end of the day, we need to address some of the challenges because Afghanistan is going through a very difficult time. And they need to be addressed from the perspective, there's a kind of a people-centric or a societal-centric perspective that we need to do. And today when, we work with Afghanistan on development issues, on issues like, vaccines or food or even pesticides, these kinds of things, health, it is driven by that logic. And I had a very good discussion with my counterpart there, and it's something which I expect to see. Finally, the last question. Look, yes, there was this incident about one of our nationals from Arunachal Pradesh, a lady who was transiting through China and who was arbitrarily detained and in a sense, I would say harassed, inconvenienced, to put it very, very mildly. And we actually protested about it. And we not only protested about it, we also made the point that, look, there are two issues. by doing this kind of thing, nothing is going to change in reality. Arunachal Pradesh is and will always be part of India. And no, this kind of tactics is not going to change anything on the ground. But there is a larger issue. You know, there are international conventions and regulations which govern the transit of people, and you know, we expect countries to abide by it. But I think this is an issue where we have a very firm and a very clear stance. So I hope you are very reassured on that score.
Thank you, sir. As you had mentioned, I think a lot of us, when we hear foreign service, we think of the geopolitical issues that are going on. But you threw a lot of light on how academic contributions and technology can play a major role as well. So I feel a lot of us are really motivated now to improve take the country's stature a lot higher in terms of soft power as well with our academic contributions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to conclude the fireside chat. For many of us here today, this interaction has transformed foreign policy from something distant and abstract into something deeply human, strategic, and purposeful. You have reminded us that India's engagement with the world is ultimately about confidence. Confidence in who we are, what we stand for, and what we can contribute. On behalf of everyone, thank you for your generosity of thought and for inspiring a generation that will carry India's voice forward in technology, diplomacy, and global leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm round of applause for Dr. S. Jaysankar.